What's going on, guys? JPS back for another video, and today we're going to be reacting to what did the British ever do for us scientifically. Make sure you guys hit the like button, hit subscribe, consider joining the Patreon, first link in description for full reactions to British shows and movies. And with that being said, let's get right into this.
What did the British, ever do for us scientifically? Nowadays, our education system regards the British as brutal colonists who enslaved populations, subjugated the world. Out of roughly 200 countries in the world today, the Brits colonised, settled or invaded about 90% of them, which I think is fairly impressive, or at least I think the Romans would think it was impressive. But would we have been better off without those bastard Brits? Now, as it happens, they may have some redeeming features. If you look at their scientific contribution at least. Now, this is a slightly different video to normal, and I'm going to talk about the British scientific and technological achievements and inventions, even though I could mention trivial things like the British invention of some of the best countries in the world, like Australia, Canada, Singapore, New Zealand, America. Well, maybe not invented, but they were certainly highly influenced. Or even...
I don't know about that. Start a war in the comment section? Let's do it. I'm just kidding, guys.
Highly influenced. Or even the only decent country in the Middle East, which is Israel, courtesy of Mr. Balfour. And many other countries that have a great deal to be proud of, such as Malaya, South Africa, Fiji, Kenya, Botswana, Sri Lanka, India, all wonderful British creations. But we're a science channel and we're going to look at science. Now, the list is long of scientific achievements, and I'm only going to look at the really big ones and some of the more important ones. Let's start. Let's start with transport and engines. So the British invented the railways, steel tracks, railway locomotives. In fact, wherever the British went, railways followed. So they put in railways in Germany, India, South America, and of course everybody copied that. Then we have the modern bicycle, initially called the Rover safety bicycle apparently, chain drive, caster steering and relatively small wheels, invented by the Rover company. In fact, in Poland, the word for bicycle is Rover. And
Wow.
Yes, it's the same company that makes Land Rovers. Now, the British obviously invented the first engines, which was the steam engine, and that broke us free from back-breaking animal and human-powered devices. Now, while the British were inventing the steam engine, they, of course, had to invent the piston, and more importantly, the piston ring that seals the piston, a truly remarkable technological invention which is even now being developed further. And the piston ring is the basis for petrol engines and diesel engines, in fact, virtually every engine. So no Brits, no engines. Next, they invented the first engine-powered ships, obviously steam-powered, ships' propellers, steel ships, the steam turbine, initially for powering ships, but now it powers the generators in every coal.
I mean, welcome to the Industrial Revolution. I think this guy could go on and on and on. Like, it really is true. All of these different inventions, and a lot of the ones we're talking about now, again, coming out of the Birmingham area, Midlands, the heart of the Industrial Revolution, all part of Britain. But it's just like at the start of the video, we're talking about all these places Britain has conquered, and it really is insane. Such a small group of islands, yet entire world has been touched by them. Like, I don't really understand how that's possible. It's very hard to wrap your mind around that.
Ships, but now it powers the generators in every coal electricity generating plant and every nuclear generating plant. So that's about 50% of all the electricity that's generated today, all courtesy of Mr. Parsons. Then we have the jet engine. Yes, the Germans independently invented it in the Second World War. The turboprop engine, invented by the Brits, the first turboprop aircraft. So if you don't fly in an airplane powered by a jet engine, which was largely due to the Brits, it's a turboprop aeroplane, which was invented by the Brits. And of course, the turboprop is the basis of the gas turbine, which is used to generate another 20% of the world's electricity. We also have the modern car layout: front drive, transverse engine, independent suspension, CV joints on the front wheels. Before that, companies tried all sorts of arrangements. So, for example, the Germans famously had the engine and everything at the back, but since 1959, most cars use the mini minor equivalent. Ever been on a vehicle that uses steel wheels? Pretty uncomfortable. But don't worry, the Brits invented the pneumatic tyre. So it looks like the British have invented pretty much everything that runs on the road.
Yeah.
They didn't invent the road, that's just about it. Well, actually they did. Tarmac roads, or tarmacadam, was invented by a Scot and a Welshman. Then we have steel bridges. And here's a very interesting one: the modern traffic roundabout in the 1960s. Now, you might think that roundabouts have been around since way before the 1960s, but the Brits had the inspired idea of changing the rules for the roundabout. In other words, yield to enter, which massively increases the efficiency of the roundabout. Then we have the cat's eye reflector. Caterpillar tracks, which the Brits invented just before they invented the tank. So there's much more we could talk about in terms of transport technology, but we must move on to other industrial and technological stuff. Now, of course, Britain famously started the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th century, and it's debated why it started in the United Kingdom, but clearly there was something special going on that made that spark. And of course, it started in the textile and agricultural industry. In the textiles, they invented the flying shuttle, powered looms, the spinning mill for making threads. In fact, if you didn't have the Brits, you don't have the very fine modern clothing which we have now, which is also incredibly cheap compared with what it used to be. In the agricultural industries, there are all sorts of mechanical devices like the mechanical seed drill, the haymaking threshing machine, but also really important things like phosphate fertilizer production, selective breeding. But that's just the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. If you're going to have an Industrial Revolution, you need a big build buildings. And so the British gave us Portland cement, a revolutionary type of cement. God. Where would we be without it? Then we have things like steel boring machines, which led to the modern lathe, which is ubiquitous in metal cutting. Hyper-accurate machines for measuring things, the micrometer, for instance. You cannot have modern engineering unless you have hyperfine methods for measuring things. We have stainless steel, the production of polyethylene, very famous practice, plastic used in just about everything. The steel hammer for forging steel and making it much stronger. The Bessemer steel process, the first mass production of steel effectively. And then the mass production of glass using the now ubiquitous...
Hope they got them to sign a waiver. This footage is crazy too. I'm honestly just in shock. Like, these are all things you interact with all day. Like, this is literally, we're saying they invented life at this point. And the craziest part is a lot of these things are used today, and you'll see them everywhere you go. Cement, I hope you see it, especially if it's drying. But it really is, this is just mind-boggling, this video.
Ubiquitous, virtually, tin flotation method. All right, let's go a little bit electrical. So the first long-distance communication cables were invented by the Brits, the coaxial cable. This was used for underwater cables to link the UK to America and other places. The first intercontinental communication, the birth of the internet in a sense. It was the first time that we could communicate all around the world. The telephone. Alexander Graham Bell was a Scotsman. The television, liquid crystal, cavity magnetron.
Oh my God.
It's in your microwave, but probably more importantly, the first radars, to a large extent, used the cavity magnetron, which was a revolution. Then if we go a little bit medical, we've got CAT scanners, ultrasound scanners, the first town to have chlorinated water. How about the first electronic programmable computer to crack German codes in the second?
This is really interesting. So these computers used to be so big, and it was so tedious that people, you have to go around and make little marks for each thing, and then one mistake and it's all done. And they did have a lot of women working on these really early computers, especially the first ones. They were used for war. I actually learned about this in one of my classes too, so very interesting. But again, this is a set of computers. I'd have to know if the first computer was built by them. I don't know, but definitely at the forefront of it, I'm sure.
To crack German codes in the Second World War. Accurate navigation using highly accurate clocks, the chronometers, and the first workable atomic clock. Then we have the World Wide Web, a gas stove, tin cans, and a really big one. I know you've been wondering where I get to this one. An alarm clock that makes tea. Again, I could have added many, many more things, but let's go on to fundamental science, the stuff that all other science and technology actually depends upon.
And I did not miss the World Wide Web bit either. That's also like anything relating to the internet or communications is like, that's literally life-changing. And now it feels like we want to go back because we're always in communication and there's too much. So now everyone's like, oh, we have all these problems in society because there's too much communication. So the next thing that will be invented is something that allows you to just tune everything out or put this away without fully putting it away. There's going to be... I wonder if the Brits will do that. There'll be some type of... I know there will be. There has to be. For our sake. Please. Get us off the internet, guys. Someone.
But before we do that, maybe just like and subscribe. How about the discovery of the proton, neutron, and electron? The three building blocks of, well, frankly, just about everything. All discovered by Brits. And the Brits also discovered the opposite of matter, which is antimatter, by Paul Dirac. And more recently, the last particle in the standard physics model of just about everything, the Higgs boson, which was proposed by Peter Biggs. Now let's go a little bit bigger, but not a great deal bigger. The atom, the model of the atom with a hard nucleus with the electrons flying around, was essentially discovered by the British. And I'm being a little bit loose there because there is a famous New Zealander involved with this. But frankly, in those days, Kiwis were basically Brits. What about biology? Well, in my view, the two biggest advances in biology were both discovered by Brits. The first one is Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. And then you have the discovery of the structure of DNA at Cambridge University. Fundamental molecular biology, of which the whole DNA revolution has been based on. And yes, I know Watson was an American and Wilkins was a Kiwi. Anyway, of course, the discovery of the structure meant this explosion in growth of the whole DNA industry, effectively, such as DNA fingerprinting, now invented by the Brits. Now let's go back to more basic, very...
And that's stuff you do in biology classes today. All this stuff. Oh my gosh. This is just amazing. I feel like I'm thinking about this every day. Everyone refers to Darwin at some point. Like, can't have life without him. Well, not everyone. Some people disagree with that.
Possibly
a lot.
More important medicine, we have antiseptics, antibiotics.
Some people disagree with
vaccines,
evolution.
All three invented by Brits. But let's go back to physics now. So we have Newton's laws of motion, Newton's laws of gravity. Where would we be without Sir Isaac Newton? We essentially couldn't predict anything. Back on to the physics, the laws of optics and the way that radio waves travel. Light, the laws of electron wave.
Matter of fact, Dark Side of the Moon. Why is there a moon, and why does this look like Pink Floyd's album cover? Did they get inspiration from Newton? I don't know.
Radio waves travel, light, the laws of electromagnetic propagation in signals and wires, Scotsman James Clerk Maxwell's. You don't have any mobile phones or computers or communication cables without Maxwell. And then we have electromagnetic induction from Michael Faraday's. If you don't understand magnetic induction, there are no electric motors, there's no electric generators. Basically, the whole backbone of the electricity system, you owe it to the Brits. Or in mathematics, and there are a lot here, so I'm going to pick the really big one, which is the invention of calculus, yes. There was another guy called Leibniz who also invented it at the same time, but essentially Newtonian calculus is at the basis of a huge amount of advanced science of engineering. It's as fundamental as algebra and arithmetic. Now, this is...
Well, I'd like to find the inventor of calculus. I'd have some words for him. But, yes, thank you. But no thank you at the same time. Made for a very painful semester.
List is not complete. There are literally a zillion other things that the Brits have contributed to. Actually, there is just one more. The Flushing Loo. Now, obviously, much of what those British scientists did was based on other scientists from lots of other countries, and the Brits were just part of this magnificent thing which we call Western civilization. Of course, there were French and there were Germans, and the scientific development and advancement then spread to the United States and now to the Far East. But the contribution of the Brits were utterly fundamental on so many levels. Now, without those advancements, our lives would be short, harsh, and frankly, just bloody horrible. The world's population would still be about 1 billion, which is what it was in about 1800, rather than the roughly 8 billion that it is today without that wonderful science and technology. Now, if you add up all the bad things that the Brits may have done, you know, the Enritza massacre, the Bengal famine, and all the other bad things.
That's it. I was about to say, that's it. We're going to cut the list there.
Albeit only occasionally considering the attitudes of the times. But even if you add all those up, it's not a drop in the bucket compared with what has been achieved and the lives that have saved. How many lives, how many babies, children, were saved by antibiotics and antiseptics, clean water, or the uses of electricity, communications and transport? Famines are effectively a thing of the past because, well, for one reason, we can shift food around from one place to another very, very easily. Now, look, it turns out that I was born in England, and even though I'm an Aussie, so I am biased. But I don't think it makes sense to be proud of what your ancestors did or were unless there's some evidence that you carry on those ideas, values and traditions. But even if you don't measure up to those ancestors or other people's ancestors, it's just bad form not to appreciate what those people did for us. The contribution of the Brits was truly incredible, and we should all be grateful that they came along and did more than virtually any other group to pull humanity out of the appalling, difficult lives that existed before the 1800s. So, do you think the ledger for those bastard Brits, is it positive or negative?
Interesting question at the end. Okay, I like this because I think we're talking about Britain. A lot of people are very, this addressing at the end was definitely necessary because people will often talk about, all the things that the Brits, maybe haven't done the best, and conquering the world and colonizing this, that, this, there. Like, I'm not even going to mention places. I might as well just say the entire world at this point. It's impossible for one nation to do only good and not have a dark history. I mean, the United States, we have an incredibly dark history that we still try and cover up to this day. Like, if you're trying to cover things up, that's really not what you should be doing. I think it's important to look at history through a critical lens and really see the past for what it is and move forward and hopefully not make the same mistakes in the future. But like when you, anyways, but yeah, there were a lot of very amazing inventions in this video, not to be undermined by anything. And yeah, I'm very grateful. I thought it was funny. Like, again, famines don't exist, but there still are a lot of problems with food. And yes, we can move food everywhere, but like no matter what inventions come out, there's always going to be problems. And there's never going to be an invention that's going to solve all these problems. Except for maybe a button that just explodes the earth. Then there can't be any problems, right? I don't know. That's a bit depressing, but that really is true. Like, I feel like as long as humanity exists, there's going to be so many flaws, so many problems, and we're always going to be trying and scrambling to solve them, but I don't think they ever will. But yes, again, comparing life now to before 1800, amazing. Like, a lot of the stuff that we take for granted on a daily basis used to be laborious task. Like, even when I just go throw my laundry in the washing machine, I just hit one button, boom. Like, that used to be a complete pain in the ass, just laundry. Just complete pain. And, you know, that's something that we don't even think about anymore. Or just having hot water, just like that. Or just having water right out of the tap. And that's still that thing, having clean water is not, it's still a privilege. So a lot of problems. We still have a lot of work to do. I think we always will. But it was really cool to check out some of the inventions that have come out of Britain and have definitely made life better for the rest of the world. So let me know, what are your thoughts about this down below? And also I want to know, like, what do you guys think about Britain's past and the inventions as well? What's one invention you're most fond of? And yeah, some interesting things that were tackled in this video. So really enjoyed this one. I hope you guys did too. Make sure you subscribe to Reef Rebels. Dr. Peter Ridd. I'm assuming that's Dr. Ridd right here. Very well spoken and obviously very knowledgeable about this subject. So, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all in the next one.